Well, Matt, were we releasing information tonight or sending out that doc, or Reggie, were we sending out that doc tonight that you put together?
Yeah, we have we're going to drop a link in Slack either during or right after the call to get everybody's official RSVP for the mastermind meetup in Mobile in October. We're going to use that to make all plans. So it'll just take a sec, just first name, last name, email, and your estimated time of arrival. And that'll give us all we need to know. Yeah, hope that everybody can make it.
The biggest piece of information is going to be a yes or a no. So even if you're a negative, we'd appreciate you filling it out, just so we don't need to track down. So whoever doesn't fill it out, we're going to be calling you and saying, hey, you coming? You're not coming? What's the word?
Yeah, I'm gonna just send it now. So y'all can hop on it.
When do you guys need to know by?
The sooner the better, but
Sooner the better.
Whenever you think you can know by. Hopefully within the next, today's Monday. Call it by next Monday. That gives us 2 months to have a firm number to complete our preparation.
Yeah, for the number of people we anticipate, we're going to have to block off a group of rooms. So we'll have to do that a little sooner rather than later. I'd like to do it in the next week or two if possible.
Not having been there, apart from driving through, is there much to do for a spouse? Like, can they get around, or do they need a car? Or
Kind of depends on where we stay. If we do the Airbnb on the beach, obviously it'll be beach if they want to do that. If we do more of a hotel where we just rent out the conference room and we're in the hotel, we could do that more in the downtown area where there's gonna be walking, stuff to walk to most likely. But I'll let Reggie, being the resident local up there, to fill in any additional data. Reggie, any other thoughts on that?
Sorry, the reason I have my camera off is because I'm stuffing my face. So excuse me. Yeah, there is stuff to do. There's museums, there's Battleship Parkway, there's outlets not too far away. So no shortage of things to do. If a few of you are going to plan on bringing spouses or partners, let us know, and maybe we can throw together a list of suggestions that they could get into during the day.
okay, yeah, that'd be good.
Good stuff. Get to see some real estate. Hopefully buy some more real estate, make some money.
I'm getting kind of excited, to be honest.
I'll get excited once we get a little more detail set. I did buy my plane ticket already, so I'm going. I'm doing a red eye. I'm leaving a conference in Vegas. And I'm getting there on the 6th. I get in at like 8 in the morning, flying from Vegas.
It's definitely 2 days, not 3 days. Is that right?
Just the 6th and the 7th is the plan right now. Yep.
All right.
I'll be there. Like, we'll probably start as far as time frame on the 6th, probably around 10-ish. So if people are driving in or flying in, they can get in that morning if they'd like. But then it's going to be all day on the 6th, and then all day on the 7th, and then chilling out. Whatever we're going to do in the morning, we might have some casual networking or whatever in the Sunday morning before everyone bounces, but nothing crazy or official.
Okay.
Yep, we'll have some guest speakers, and maybe we can make it to where people are driving in, say that morning, we can save some of the, I guess, more valuable content for later.
We shall see.
Oh, the magician confirmed.
Okay, good. Has the clown confirmed yet?
Around
No, that's me.
Oh, all right.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into tonight's conversation. I went ahead and sent that form over in Slack, just in the general form. So
you want to throw it in the chat here too if you got it copied?
I don't. I did it on my phone.
No, I'll just do it. So we have it.
Have it in all places. But what we're going to be covering tonight is basically going to be the second segment of kind of writing offers, crafting offers, creative negotiations, strategies. We talked about creative actual deal structuring last Monday. So today we're going to be discussing part 2 of that, which is going to be LOIs, decoding. Was it decoding the LOI or something like that, Matt? You had some fancy name for it.
Oh man, decoding the LOI, your secret weapon. And I got a good picture of Chuck. I don't think is Chuck on the call. I don't know.
But all right, I'll let you take away the slides.
All right. I will gladly take over once the Grandmaster, the father Ferrari gives me permission to share my screen.
You should have. Man.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. All right. What's up, my party people? All right. Monday, July 31st. We are 1 month into Q3 for the year. So if you have goals set and you aren't halfway to your goals by the end of the year, you're way behind. So get excited and let's go. All right, we're like you said, we're on the making offers of commercial multifamily. This is more of the, I don't say beginner series, surface level series, the 4-part series. So we talked about crafting structures, crafting successful structures last week. We're going to get into LOIs this week. So, you know, what we're calling your secret weapon in the business here. All right, so when you think about secret weapon, this is Chuck crafting his perfect little secret weapon here. But the weapon we're going to be talking about today is the LOI. All right. So for a lot of you, for some of you, this may be basic for the initial slide here, but for others of you who are newer in the business, this will hopefully be very useful information to start to kind of decode a lot of these words. We're talking about a lot about the structure of the LOI. We keep saying LOI. What is LOI? So first of all, LOI is a letter of intent. The nice thing about the commercial multifamily world is it's actually more casual than people realize upfront to get an offer versus the residential real estate space. What you're sending over in offers is an official signed contract already. It's typically a boilerplate contract that's sent over, run by the state, or some pre-planned contract if you're in wholesaling or flipping, and that's it. Like it's an actual contract that you send. But we have this initial part in the commercial space to kind of, it's like an official way to start a conversation, basically, is what it is. It's almost like if you guys remember back in elementary school, well, Josh, this may not apply to you being so much younger than us, but we used to pass notes to each other because we didn't have phones in school. And so when we would pass notes, one of those notes, if you had a girl you really liked them, you would say, hey, will you be my girlfriend? Circle yes or no. And this is kind of that official conversation that starting that conversation, like, hey, will you let me buy this property? Like that's kind of the conversation starters, you passing this note over. That's the way I kind of think about it. And so our goal here today is to hopefully leave here not having any questions from you guys. Like this is Marcus here just contemplating like, man, how do I make an LOI? And he's just starting from this wrinkly sheet of paper here. All right, so that's kind of the power of LOIs in commercial real estate, is the fact that it's like the official conversation starter. It's one level above verbal offers, but it is not an official contract. So there's kind of levels in the real estate space. We can toss out verbal offers all day long. And I don't know if you guys know this, but if you're talking to a licensed realtor, their job, they're ethically bound to pass all offers to their sellers. And even if you were to say, hey, Mr. Agent, I want to give an offer for $10, Bob, on this deal. And ethically, they are bound to pass that offer to their seller, even if it's a verbal offer, unless they have something contractually written saying they don't need to pass verbal offers. So just realize that is the case. And so verbal offers are a level of detail in real estate space. Next is going to be the LOI, and then we get to the actual contract and actual purchase and sale agreement, which is the contract itself. All right. The nice thing about the LOI, though, this is the way you can unlock the bigger picture. This is like the 30,000-foot view of the deal. And so this is your way to creatively structure a deal and have agreement with the seller on the big picture stuff before we get into the nitty-gritty details. So it really is a time saver. So rather than having to like determine everything up front, you don't need to paint the entire Mona Lisa. You can just be like, hey, I want to put a picture of a lady with kind of smiling up here. Is that good enough for you? Can we start with that as far as a big picture before we get into the details? And that's kind of the way it is for you. So you can unlock the secrets there through the LOI. And really, it is just the foundation for success in this entire offer process is going to be getting a solid LOI. So today, we really want you guys to understand what the LOI is. We'll talk some strategies, specific strategies within the LOI, and then hopefully start winning some deals from there. All right. So the first thing when it comes to crafting an LOI is understanding what the seller wants and what the seller needs. We'll get into negotiations next week, and negotiations are a big part of this industry. And one of the big things we'll talk about is the black swan. It's a term that was derived from Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss in his book. And the black swan in his mind was like, what is the one? Well, you could have multiple black swans, but what is that driving force that's behind a person's decision to take action? In our case, a seller to sell their property. And so if you can determine what that black swan is, what that seller's need is, you can craft that offer all around that. Sometimes sellers are as transparent as they come, and other times they are very tight-lipped and you have no information. And so that's your goal, basically, is to understand what the seller's needs and wants are, and then your goal to try to extract it out of it. And this is Christoph here. This is when he finally found somebody's black swan. He was super excited. He couldn't contain himself there. All right, so first thing is, don't assume. If I were to pass you an LOI today, saying, "Hey, here's the LOI we used on our last deal," you would be incorrect. You would be wrong to use that LOI for your next offer. I can just basically tell you right now, right? Because not every LOI is going to be the same. Every terms are going to be shifted. Like, everything needs to be crafted for that specific deal. So these are going to be custom made for sure. And like I said, you're going to focus on what the seller wants. Now, effective communication is going to be key here as well. And we'll kind of talk to when we're talking with brokers. So sometimes a seller has hired a broker to, broker the deal, and their job is to be the middleman and to try to act in the best interest of the seller. So when you're dealing with a broker, realize their job almost all the time is to be a fiduciary, sometimes a fiduciary, most of the time a fiduciary for the seller themselves. And so just realize everything that the broker is telling you is typically biased in the direction of the seller. But regardless, you want to make sure you have effective communication with the broker to really pull out that information. So you can just straight up ask the broker the questions. You can say, why is the seller selling? What is their motivation here? Do they have a timeline that's involved? Is their loan coming due soon? Like, what's the status of their insurance? Are they renewing soon? Like, you can ask these questions up front that you think are going to be driving factors to instill a sense of timeline or desire or motivation from the seller out the gate. And so that effective communication is going to be key. And just like we've talked about in previous lessons, relationships are going to help drive that communication chain. So one of the reasons that we really kind of leverage Reggie as being, one of the main points of contact for certain brokers, or Josh for other brokers, because they have relationships that they've developed with those brokers. And so we want to leverage those relationships in these negotiations. We're even doing that outside of this, where, for instance, this week, Josh is going to be trying to negotiate with one of our sellers who we have a seller financing note with to negotiate to put him from a first position lien to a second position lien, so we can unlock a line of credit to have more cash infusion for that deal. And we're having Josh do that specifically versus me calling the guy, because I've never talked to the guy, right? So we're trying to leverage a relationship that Josh has already engaged with on that front. So that effective communication with the broker is going to be key when you're trying to find this black swan, the need of the seller. All right. Now, the goal ultimately, though, is to try to get in front of the seller if you can. Some brokers are going to do their damnedest to not let that happen, because they have a fear that you're going to go around them. And depending on the type of relationship, contractual relationship that the broker has with the seller, sometimes you can go around them. Ethically, I don't recommend trying to be that guy, though. The moment you get known as being the guy who goes around agents, it's just not good, right? Again, this is a small world in the commercial multifamily space. So if there's a broker involved, I recommend leveraging him, but asking him, hey, I would love to have a face-to-face with the seller. Would you mind facilitating that? Is that something we can arrange? Can we at least arrange a phone call or a Zoom or something that I can talk to the seller directly and have some questions? And rather than having you play middleman for these 100 questions, can we just sit down for an hour and just kind of talk? And sometimes the reverse is going to be true as well, where the seller is going to want to meet the buyers before they pass you information. Some sellers are very particular about ensuring that buyers have the right interest and the right goals in mind for the property even after they sell it. They have some sort of like a legacy mindset with their property, even though they're not going to own it after they sell it. They still want to see the property go in the direction that they originally started. So do everything you can with that relationship that you've developed with the broker to get in front of the seller and start having these questions. And once you do get in front of the seller, you can totally ask the same questions. Hey, Mr. Seller. Hey, Bob. Or hey, hey, Dan. What's your goal, man? Like, why are you selling the property? I'm just curious. It looks like a great property. Seems like it's operating really well. And you know, the classic give them a turd sandwich too. If you're trying to highlight something that might be negative in the property. So let's say the property is at 45% occupancy, right? Extremely low occupancy for an area. And you can be like, hey, man, it seems like a beautiful property. It really does. I'm curious why you're selling. I was surprised to find out that you were only 45% occupancy. I'd love to hear more details of that. But, you know, beyond that, it looks beautiful from the outside, right? So you can kind of throw in the little like negative aspect between a few positive aspects there and see how they respond from those. And when you're engaging with these, with the sellers, you kind of feel out the conversation from there as much as you can. Now, this is also a good opportunity if you can get in front of a seller, and even if you can't, you can do it through text or emails using the broker as a conduit. This is your chance to educate sellers on the creative solutions that we talked about last week. Because as you engage in these conversations, your mind's gonna start to wonder, like, does this work as a vanilla deal? Do I need seller financing? Do I want seller financing? Does he have a good loan in place that I want to assume his loan? Can I do some sort of subject to deal? Is there some hybrid model that's going to work better? Maybe I need to do a master lease option for whatever reason. Like, you're going to start to go through these different scenarios in your head. And once you kind of come to the one or two or maybe three options that you think are going to be work best, this is your chance to potentially educate the seller on the process. Now, if it's a savvy seller who's selling a 300-unit apartment complex and they have 20,000 doors, you're probably not going to educate them on something they don't know about. But if it's a mom and pop seller, there's a good chance you're like, if they own a 50, 100, or 200-unit apartment complex, there's a good chance you have an opportunity to educate them on why it's going to be beneficial with the way you're planning on offering on the deal. Even people, it's surprising the number of people who own large properties that just don't understand real estate, to be honest with you. Sometimes they were just handed down the business. It was through whatever reason. There's a lot of people who own real estate who don't understand real estate. So don't take it for granted because you know something that you assume that they know something as well. You can just totally ask them the question if you get in front of them, like, hey man, I'd love to buy this, via seller financing, if that's something you would consider. Are you familiar with kind of some of the benefits of why seller financing might be beneficial to you? And you can totally ask the seller that, and they'd be like, well, I want all the cash up front. Like, okay, like what's your plan once you get the cash though? Are you planning on buying something else, or are you just going to sit on it? You're just going to let appreciation eat away at it? Because you can have this cash as a secured asset here, as an investment that you can make money off of even when you're done. And you just have these straight up conversations that a lot of sellers just aren't aware of. I will say in general, in the commercial multifamily space, most sellers, probably 60% or so sellers, are aware of most creative financing solutions, but there's still a good chunk of, anecdotally, 30 to 40% of sellers don't quite know the options that you guys already know. Even for people who have been here for a week or two, you realize you know more options at this point than a lot of people who own real estate. So again, don't take your knowledge for granted. Now, from here also, as you're engaging with the seller, this should be obvious, but based on everything else we said, you want to come at it with a mentality, with an air of collaboration versus confrontation. There are some people that will throw out offers of, hey, Mr. Seller, here's your offer, 10 million, take it or leave it. And like literally that is the conversation. That's their tactic. And I will highly recommend to not go that direction. If you come at it with an air of collaboration, you'll see, we'll talk about here in a second about developing win-win strategies, but really just collaboration of like, hey man, I'd love to help you sell this property. I'd love to buy it. So let's come to an agreement here that we can both benefit from. And if you come with that mentality of collaboration versus confrontation, you're going to really see much more success. Reggie, I know you engage a lot with sellers, especially with some of the deals we've been talking about recently. Or Josh, any other additional kind of comments you want to talk about, kind of understanding the seller's needs?
They're all different, and you kind of have to use that personal touch to find out how to connect with each one. If you guys aren't familiar, like MBTI, the personality assessment, That's really good for kind of helping to characterize people. Being in corporate sales, they were always putting us through sales trainings. And so we were, there was a lot of work went into the psychology of the customer or the client, and so it's something to pay attention to, and it really helps.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to educating sellers specifically on creative solutions, oftentimes what you'll find, the reason that you want to be the one doing that and not the broker, because you'll find that a lot of brokers don't actually fully understand the creative solution in and of itself, or they're not pushing for the creative solution because they don't care. And maybe they just don't care about the sale, or maybe they like another buyer better than you, and so there's some bias or some favoritism there. And so they just nonchalantly tell their seller, hey, this guy's willing to give you $20 million on your $10 million asking deal, but you're going to get it over the course of 20 years. And they're like, well, no, I don't want that. I want the money today. And so suddenly they're not interested, but they didn't actually explain all the benefits of it. So getting that direct contact with the seller is not only going to be benefit in being able to build the rapport and build the relationship, but also if you're needing to educate them on creative solutions and just negotiating in general. Some brokers are pretty good at negotiating and getting what it is that you're thinking or wanting to say across to the seller, being the best middleman, what have you. But oftentimes it's best if you can just go direct.
Yeah, totally. I will say, the moment you start bringing up creative solutions in this phase of, like, as you're trying to engage before you send up the actual LOI and you're just kind of information finding right now, the moment you say, hey, yeah, I'd like to assume the loan, or I'd like to buy subject to the property, or I want to do seller financing, almost, I don't know, a lot, I don't know what the percentage, we'll throw them again anecdotally, we'll say 3 out of 4 agents, what they're going to do, brokers, they're going to instantly think that somehow, because you're using creative financing, that means they're not getting paid, or you're trying to cut them out. So it's a good thing to let them know, like, hey, you're still going to get paid your normal commission on this. I'm not trying to, like, do anything crazy here where you're getting cut out. I'm just trying to make a deal happen. You see that all the time. All right. Any questions on this, guys?
I got a question for I guess Josh, the young guy on the panel.
Yeah.
So Josh, especially when you're kind of starting out, as being a younger guy, and what were kind of some of the strategies or tactics, or whatever you want to call it, when engaging with different brokers or sellers who may be put off by how young you are, and may just automatically not trust you because they may not think that you know what you're doing, simply because of your age. Obviously you overcame that. I was wondering, what were some of the techniques you used to do so?
Funny that you mentioned that. I'm not sure if Matt put this in.
We'll cover the credibility stuff here in a little bit. So, I mean, you can, if you want to answer the question, you can totally, but we will cover the credibility piece here in a little bit.
So there's this credibility packet I actually put together when I first got started, which was a great kind of like boiler template document for me to send to just be seen as additionally credible. It's just kind of like your baseline experience, and we'll cover some of that here in a second. But the credibility packet helped. And then honestly, just tying yourself in, connecting yourself, letting people know that you're connected to other people who know more than you do, whether directly on your team or a mentor or some kind of like KP that's going to help you close the deal. And it really helps. Like, it speaks 10x more than it does just to name drop someone who has experience than when it does when you name drop someone that they've personally closed a deal with. Like,
I mean, here, let me show you a real world example right now. Do this.
Do it in order, Mama. Give you the 5.
All right, so here, this is a real world example. Literally just happened right now, like 10 minutes ago, where sorry, there's a bug right here. You guys are familiar with Pace Morby. If you're not, he's like the sub 2 guy. He's got a big community. He does a lot of subject to stuff. But there's a deal that I'm selling as an agent, as a broker in a deal. It's a $3 million short-term rental. The guy's willing to sell his company that owns the property rather than the property itself, right? So we can mitigate a lot of sales tax in Florida by selling just the company versus selling the real estate. And he's willing to sell it with his loan in place, which is a 3% mortgage, and he's willing to sell or finance a gap of that a gap between the purchase price and that. So it's a good hybrid deal. And I'd love to get it in. This one investor messaged me, and he said, did you by chance get to present it to Chase or to Pace meaning Pace Morby, the guy who runs all the stuff. He's on, $100,000 flip or whatever on A&E. I said, I'd love to, but no, I've not gotten it from there. Is there a process for that? He said, hey, he does for voice students, I'll message him right now. Once he sees the students involved, he'd love to do a deal or whatever. So this is exactly to Josh's point. Because this person is linked with Pace Morby, instantly I'm like, okay, we might be able to make this happen, right? But if this guy all of a sudden was someone I didn't know in the deal, I'd be less inclined to take him as seriously. So just a real world example that happened 10 minutes ago with me as the broker in that scenario, trying to make the deal happen. But yeah, we'll get into the credibility package stuff here in a second. All right. So one of the questions that Josh had last time when he taught on the LOI whatever that was, a year and a half ago, last time we discussed it, was a lot of people were curious about how do you craft multiple offers and what does multiple offers look within an LOI? And we'll go over an LOI example here at the end. It's nothing surprising. It's more to understand right now, like the whole point of this lesson is really understand the components of the LOI, because the actual LOI, once you see it, it's a piece of paper. It's relatively mundane. But if you're like Dan here and you're examining different doors to access a building, you're like, hey, which is the best door to get into this building? Or if you want to maybe present multiple doors to get into a building, then you can offer a variety of options to a seller within an LOI. So effectively giving them choices rather than ultimatums. Now, some brokers are going to tell you that providing multiple options in an LOI is annoying and will reduce your credibility. Other brokers are going to say they enjoy it because it gives their sellers options to choose from. It's really, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I'm not telling you this is a strategy to take 100% of the time. I will say there are most likely times that this strategy can work. Again, depending on the seller, and to exactly to Reggie's point, every seller is going to be different. You need to kind of feel them out. So you want to align the offers with the seller's goals like we talked about. And this is where you can start to offer both traditional and creative solutions within like a multiple offer scenario or a multiple option scenario, we'll say. Now, again, in here, you want to emphasize win-win solutions. I think I've showed you guys previously the seller financing option table that I use. Just as a quick example, let me pull that up again. So here's the seller financing table that we've used in the past that I've showed you. I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. So if there was a deal here that I wanted to offer somebody, I could tell them, hey, I can offer you $6.5 million at 2% interest with a 30-year amortization, no balloon, 7% down payment. Here's the loan amount. In the end, you're going to make the most money with this option. But I can also offer you $5.5 million. And the nice thing about this, you have a shorter balloon. So you get your money back in 10 years. More interest too, if you want, 7% down. But in the end, you're going to make $1 million less, $1.6 million less at the end of the day. Or I can offer you $4.5 million at higher interest rate if you want. So it's a lower purchase price, but a higher interest rate, shorter balloon, even a higher down payment, but you're making $3 million less at the end of the day. So like, which one do you want, right? So you can present these kind of offers if you'd like, even in a simple table format like this. This is the exact table that I use when I'm presenting different seller financing options to people. And I like to, again, I'm gonna gear everything I can towards the option that I want. In this scenario, obviously, I want the seller to take option A because I'm saying, hey, you're getting the most amount of money here. I might be paying the most, but in the end, if I'm getting no balloon with fixed rate debt at 2%, like, man, that's what I want. I want long-term fixed rate debt to have, guaranteed, not say guaranteed, but at least confident forecast going forward. So anyways, just give you an idea of what that could look like when you're presenting that in a table format. All right. So that's me emphasizing win-win deals. I'm happy to do the other one. I'm happy to offer him $4.5 million though, too. It's going to be higher down. He'll make more money now and today, but he's not going to make less money in the grand scheme of things. All right. Now, again, it comes down to the seller needs to be satisfied with one of your options, though. And one of the ways you can satisfy a seller is realizing you can set yourself up for a little bit what they call wiggle room in the negotiations, right? So You can start off the conversation like we did earlier today. Reggie and I were talking about one of the deals where you said, how about principal only payments? What does that mean to you guys? If someone says, hey, I'll buy that with principal only payments. What's that mean? How much interest are you paying there?
Zero.
Zero, right? What sounds better? Principal only payments or 0% interest? You know, to someone who's not savvy, it's principal only still sounds good. 0% interest, everyone feels like they're getting cheated.
Right.
And so that's one small verbiage that you can use to at least make the seller feel like he's in a winning situation. The other thing you can do is for those small victories, you can intentionally build in, you should be intentionally building in buffer, right? If you have a maximum allowable offer of a certain price, you're not going to start your conversation at that maximum allowable offer, right? You're going to start lower to allow that other person to feel like they're getting some small victories. It's the whole battle versus the war concept. Like intentionally set yourself up for a few losses on a few battlefields, but for ultimately for you to win the war of the negotiations. So set yourself up for those small victories. All right. Sorry, any questions on kind of crafting multiple offers, presenting multiple offers, anything on that front, guys? Okay, cool. EMD strategies during uncertain times. So this is Dylan here. I don't know, this is just a funny one that AI produced. I don't know why it's like he was like standing. I didn't know if he was wearing this, but he's weighing his risks and rewards right now in front of him. He's trying to balance out what he thinks is right. And one of your biggest risks as investors in this phase that you're considering when you're writing an offer, your nearest term risk is going to be your EMD, your earnest money deposit. Now, earnest money deposit, in some places they'll call it good faith deposit, but effectively that is your risk, your initial risk capital, the amount of the capital that you're going to put into the deal, that you're risking that if you jack up the contract, if you breach the contract, if you do something wrong, that money is going to go to the seller. That's the intent of what the earnest money deposit is. And so anytime you're crafting a deal, you can use this EMD as a lever to balance risk and reward to make a deal look sweeter to a seller than otherwise what it may have been. And so, for instance, one of the things you can do, you can have your earnest money deposit go hard on day one. And a lot of people be like, what the hell? Why would you do that? That seems like a very dumb idea. What about inspections, Matt? What are you going to do then? So let's say you're buying a 100-unit complex, and you want to put, I can't think of prices right now, $20,000 as a deposit. So 20,000 is going to go hard. You could say, hey, what we're going to do, we're going to have $5,000 go hard on day one. The remaining $15,000 is going to be contingent upon my financing getting approved. And so you're showing a little bit going hard on day one. So you're giving that small victory to the seller, but ultimately your risk is you're being minimized, but the seller still perceives a $20,000 EMD, but really your risk is like a $5,000 in that piece. The other way you can mitigate this is if you offer, even if you have your $20,000 go hard, let's say it's a smaller complex. Let's say you're looking to buy a 10-unit complex, just 10 units, right? And it's in a local area, you can get an inspector in there, like, in 48 hours, you can get an inspector over there to inspect all 10 units. If that's the case, you could say, hey, I'll give you this $20,000 hard deposit on day one, but we're going to have this early access period where we can actually access the property before we sign the contract, before we get official. And so what you're going to do, to the seller, it looks really good because the seller sees, hey man, this earnest money deposit is hard right away. And it's true. However, it's not going to be hard until you've already done your inspections basically prior to that during that early access period. So again, it's another small victory. So effectively you're showing them a 0-day inspection period, a 0-day due diligence period. But you're able to still do a quick due diligence or maybe a full due diligence, depending on the size of the property, prior to your earnest money even being released or being given to the title company. So that's another way to kind of mitigate that. You could, the other thing with EMD is that you could leverage the typical earnest money deposit amount is going to be 1% in the business. And so if you're buying something for $12 million, 1% of that's going to be $120,000, right? And so you could put down 120 grand as your deposit. That maybe you're going to go hard day one with 120 grand, right? That's a big risk. The other thing you could do is you could say, maybe I have enough friends and family that I'm going to put together 250 grand. I'm going to go over 2% on my earnest money deposit. but I'm going to make sure I have contingencies in place. So this money is almost never going to go to that seller, right? Because I have a due diligence period, I have a financing period. We'll talk about other contingency here in a second that you can strap on there. And so you can make it seem like you have a massive deposit in place, because you do, but that deposit is effectively so protected, it's never going to go to the seller, right? So there's just different ways to be perceived. You can throw a really high deposit that is protected, or you can go with a smaller deposit that's not as protected. And so depending on the seller's goals and desires and you feeling out what the seller really wants, maybe he wants to see hard money day one, or maybe he just wants to see a lot of money at risk, but your risk is ultimately pretty small. So that's why you're kind of balancing out your risk versus reward when you're discussing the earnest money deposit. And again, this is why it helps you kind of navigate the market with confidence, because you're going to understand what you're risking versus what is the reward in those scenarios. All right, so we just talked about some of those smart tactics for success, and some of this goes into what I was saying here with the obvious and less obvious protections. We're going to talk about contingencies next, but there are some contingencies that you can have within your LOI that protect your money that are super obvious, but you can have some that are a little more vague, and we'll kind of get into those next. But any questions on kind of EMD strategies or what the EMD means or any of that fun stuff? No, sweet. It's a Monday. You guys are super interactive. Love it. Sorry, Oliver had a question here. In your 7% down example, how would a broker get paid if there was a broker who takes? Yeah, so in the 7% example, that was a deal that I was looking at for one of my clients actually, and basically in that scenario, the broker was going to get paid 4%. It was going to be like 2% down payment, and the seller was going to get like 1% actual cash in their pocket. So it wasn't going to be a ton of money to the seller on day one, but the seller, again, looking at what the seller wanted. The seller didn't care about cash out of pocket at the time. He cared more about purchase price. So it just comes down to the goals of the seller. Some sellers want to see a ton of cash down at closing, but in that scenario, the seller didn't care as much. All right.
So, okay, Matt, before you go,
Yeah.
on the earnest money deposit, do you give that with the LOI once it's accepted? And do you, where does the money go? Am I, obviously not everybody's writing checks, right? So does it get sent directly to the attorney and put into some type of account? I forget the name of the account, but something about
An escrow account.
escrow account. Yeah.
So typically, no. Typically, you're not going to send earnest money deposit until the PSA is signed. There are sometimes, again, you can craft your LOI however you want, right? Now, the one thing that if it's not said already, and I'm sure we'll say it, and I'll say it again now, is an LOI is not a contract. And at the end of every LOI, we say, this is not meant to be a legally binding document. We make it very clear, like, this is not a contract. This is that note to your friend saying, hey, do you want to be friends with me? Like, this is like an official. It's not quite official yet though. So most of the time, your earnest money deposit will not be due until a certain period that's going to be spelled out in the contract after it has been the PSA, the purchase and sale agreement, has been signed. That's when the earnest money deposits typically due. Reggie, any additional thoughts on that?
Most of what I've seen is 5 to 10 days within signing the PSA, which that also gives you a little extra time too, even after you've signed, because if you never show up with the earnest money, that contract is null and void.
Yeah.
So, and
again, depending on how the contract's written, if you're smart, we'll get into purchase and sale agreements next week or 2 weeks, I think. We'll talk about PSAs, but some contracts are written at the detriment of the buyer, to where even if you don't submit the EMD, you still have to pay them the EMD if you breach the contract. So they can sue you for that EMD. Other contracts are written where if you don't pay the EMD, it's effectively a breaching contract, and the resolution is to move on with your lives. So it all kind of depends on how the contract's written there. All right. Closing timeframes and strategies. So here's April mapping out her timelines on her calendar in her office for her offer, trying to make sure she's smart and understands the restrictions. This is a good discussion to have as we're approaching fall, because a lot of people forget that nothing effectively happens in business between, call it November 20th through January 5th. Like, let's just call a spade, people, right? People don't really work between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. So when you're looking at timeframes, time of year and actually pulling out a calendar matters. At the same time is money. So you need to understand, like, what are some strategies we can think think of to help, entice our offer here. So ultimately, it really narrows down an offer to kind of three big mechanisms. The first one's purchase price. Your next one's earnest money deposit. And the last one's going to be timelines. Those are kind of the three big levers you're pulling. And when it comes to timelines, this is how you can make or break a deal as well. So you could, like I said, one of the timelines to consider is going to be your due diligence. So you could shorten due diligence, like we talked about, to be a more enticing deal. Typically in our offers, I'll say our boilerplate offer, if you will, is typically 30 days due diligence, and 30 days after that point, we're going to try to close like that. So we have a 60-day window. But if you have a seller who's really concerned about something, or maybe you have a multiple offer scenario where you're assuming that everyone else is making similar offers to a 30-day due diligence period, if it's a small enough property, or if you think you can get your ducks in a row to get it done in 20 days, that's one way you can have an edge in your LOI. Like you have the ability to potentially make a deal happen because you're willing to really push up the throttle and get things done earlier. The other one you could push up as far as timelines is going to be your actual closing. Like I said, a normal time frame is going to be a 60-day close, but what if you can make it happen in 45 days? What if you can make it happen in 30 days? What about 15 days? Now, this is also going to depend on the type of financing you're having. Like if you're working with a lender and you can close in 15 days, let me know your lender's number, because I don't know of any lender that'll close a commercial deal in 15 days. A commercial deal of significance, we'll say. But if you're working with a seller financing opportunity and he really wants to close, and you have, let's say it's a 10 unit again, like a smaller complex where you can get your inspector over there, he's willing to seller finance and he wants to get it off his books quick because he's moving to Bermuda and he's never thinking about America ever again. Like, sweet, man, like let's make this happen. 15 days, I'll buy it from you. Give me my inspector in there and we'll call it good. As long as title's cleared up, we're good to go. Title normally only takes, a week or two, maybe, to get that title cleared up. So another thing you could set yourself apart is going to be with the closing time frame. And then obviously responding to the dynamics of the market. So depending on what you're looking at, you can kind of shift the timelines one way or another. There are sometimes, again, knowing the goals of your seller, sometimes the seller is going to want to wait until after a certain day. Maybe they bought this place 364 days ago, and they really need to wait until 366 days, a year and a day, so they're not getting hit with short-term capital gains or for whatever gains they're receiving on the sale. So just understanding, again, what the seller wants and shifting your timelines to try to make it work for you and your seller. So if your seller does want speed, meaning they're motivated for whatever reason it is, like it's a tax issue or their insurance is coming to be renewed, and they're like, crap, I really need to sell this thing or I'm gonna be hit with a big fee. Leverage that to the max extent you can to try to make other terms work in your favor. So if you're going to bust your ass to close in a certain time or to finish due diligence at a certain time, then let them know, hey man, I'm willing to do that. I would love to do that for you. But in order to do that, I'm going to need some concessions on your part. And maybe I need, X, Y, and Z, whatever happens to be for your specific deal that you need terms to be in your favor. All right. Now, the other thing to remember is that if you can, build flexibility into your offers, meaning if you can work in auto extensions to not put yourself in a square corner, please do that. If you're offering seller financing, rather than saying, hey, at year 5, I will pay you back, you can put a contingency on that, right? At year 5, I'll pay you back if the property appraises at a certain price or more, right? Because if the market drops, you might put yourself in a square corner. So if you work in an auto extension at the end of a balloon period, you now have a little bit of wiggle room in year 5 that you're not going to be shooting yourself in the foot, right? So just think about these auto extensions. Doesn't have to do with balloon periods. You can have auto extensions with your due diligence, even with lending before you close, right? You can have built-in auto extensions as needed. And sometimes those auto extensions can be free based on those contingencies. Like, hey, if it doesn't appraise, I automatically get another year's extension for the balloon. But sometimes it costs you money, right? Sometimes you need to justify these extensions. So you say, hey, if this property doesn't appraise at year 5 for this certain price, I'm going to pay you an extra 1% fee, but I also get another year's extension, right? So it's other ways to work to get yourself terms and really just prevent yourself from putting yourself in a square corner. So give yourself as many outs as possible. Options are going to give you life in this business. All right. And then, paperwork requirements, kind of all the same thing as far as building flexibility there. But when I'm talking about paperwork requirements here is one of the things that we've done before in the past is we'll say our due diligence period begins the moment we receive this list of documents. Boom, here's our list of 12 documents or whatever it happens to be. And until we received every single one of these documents, our due diligence period does not begin. And it's nice because sometimes they're like, hey man, I'm still looking for this survey. I've given you everything else, but I can't find the survey. Give me another week. Give me another week. And I'm like, take all the time you want, man, because I'm doing all this other stuff on free time, basically. My due diligence period hasn't even begun yet. So putting these like kind of little caveats into your offer can really save your bacon. Because again, it's for a reason too. You don't want to start your due diligence period without all the data you need. The last thing you want to do is get that survey last minute and realize there's some massive, easement that you didn't consider for your, post-development plan or whatever it was. So just things to consider there. Any questions on timeframes or kind of strategies when it comes to closing and stuff there? Reggie or Josh, any other additions there?
Hey, Matt, there's a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. I'm terrible at checking that. Let's see here. From Justin. So what is the main difference between early access, boots in the ground, walkthroughs after you submit the LOI, after EMD goes hard, and the actual physical walkthrough during the designated diligence period after PSA has been signed? Or am I mixing things up and you want the due diligence done ASAP, no matter which part of the timeline you're at? All right. So shit, sorry. Amber alerts going off here. So when it comes to, all right, when it comes to early access period, boots in the ground, that is, all that is saying is before you have money going hard, you're able to access the property and do whatever due diligence you're able to during that period. They're giving you access to the property before the PSA has been signed or before a certain period within your negotiations. A lot of sellers don't want you walking their units until you have officially signed a contract with them saying, hey, you can walk my units. We're going to buy this. Here's all the terms. And everyone has signed the dotted line. But an early access period is having you access the property prior to all that happening, prior to it being official. So you're able to spend money there. There's a bit of risk on your end, right? Because you're accessing it again before you sign. You're spending money on the inspections and everything. But it also, again, depending on the way their offer is written, it's just nice. So what is the difference between early access period? Early access period is just being able to get in there before anything's official. Your due diligence period, if you have one in your contract, is your period in general to search whatever you need to search, documents, county-wise, permits, whatever it happens to be, restrictions, title, liens, all that fun stuff. And you can generally back out of the contract at your sole discretion. Again, hopefully that's the way you're writing your contracts. But that's what the due diligence period is. It's your ability to back out of the deal after you sign the contract. That cleared up for early access versus the due diligence period under contract.
Yep, but you can also do your physical, like you can continue to do that kind of due diligence even like during that stage.
Correct. Yeah. So again, depending on how we're defining the early access, but yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of early access, that you're able to physically get on site, whether it's with an inspector or whatever capacity that you're most concerned about. You can go and do your inspections prior to everything being official. And even afterwards, yes. So even afterwards, if you have a due diligence period, yes. Even after your due diligence period ends, you still have access to the property. The problem is typically, again, depending on the way you're writing your contract, let's say you get a property under contract and you have a 30-day due diligence period, and then you have another 30-day window to close. Under your 30-day due diligence period, you didn't find anything scary, everything's fine. You get to that day 31, and then you're like, oh crap, you know what? We never inspected the sewers. Like maybe we should have done that. You can still go and inspect the sewers at that point. You typically, again, just to pay the way the contract's written, you just can't back out and get your money back because you've already passed that kind of inspection period, right? So they'll still let you inspect the property generally. But your reason for backing out after the due diligence period is generally only for low appraisals or financial restrictions if you have a financial contingency. Again, it depends on how you have the PSA structured.
Got it. So does the seller usually only give you early access if you have some kind of EMD going hard, or there's like no incentive for them to give you that?
It's really seller dependent, I would say. I mean, some sellers don't mind. Some sellers like, yeah, I want to figure it out if you're in this deal sooner than later, right? So some sellers are just like, get in, let me know if you're a serious buyer. So go get over there now. While other sellers are much more timid about giving you access. Like we had up in Montgomery where we went over there, we had to pretend we were the insurance inspectors and get into the property, and the next thing you know, we're getting kicked off the property because drama happened and then people are getting fired and we're like, what the hell is going on? Because, you know, so sometimes it's a very tricky situation that you need to be a little bit, we'll say, sensitive to kind of the politics of the way the property is owned and run. And so sometimes early access is totally fine. Other times early access is not going to be permitted.
So sorry, last question. So is this
Oh, you're good.
before the PSA is like given to the seller or after?
Yeah, so what you're gonna do, you're gonna sign the LOI, you're gonna have an agreement for an early access period, but
Okay.
so between when this LOI is signed, but before the contract is signed, the PSA is signed, that would be the early access period.
So after LOI, before PSA.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. And again, depending on your negotiations, you can do it before an LOI is signed potentially as well, if the seller really wants to. I just personally, as a buyer, I would want to at least have the seller sign at least an LOI showing that he's committed to this. Again, knowing it's not contractually committed, but it's kind of like the man-to-man connection here, person-to-person connection. Hey, I'm verbally telling you this. I'm not signing a contract this, but we both agree to these terms, person to person. That's what it is.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. All right, here we go. We got Michael exercising his extreme customization. He made a puzzle of himself. I thought that was kind of a cool one. All right, so we're talking about contingencies and customization here of the LOI. So you need to know when to, you know, hold or fold your contingencies. As a buyer, you want to feel comfortable, right? And you can put on your Snuggie, you can get your nice comfort blanket, and you can turn on your white noise, and you can get as comfortable as you want with a perfect temperature set. And here you are, your perfect little bed, right? But realize the more comfortable you are as a buyer, that means the seller's also, the more comfortable you are, the more risk the seller's putting, right? Because you're protected. The more protected you are, the more vulnerable the seller is, I guess is the best way to put it. So while contingencies are nice, and I'm telling you, you want to give yourself options, it is also one of those things that you need to kind of weigh the risk versus reward. Because the more contingencies you throw out there, the weaker your offer is. So if you're the only deal in town and is an extremely motivated seller and you have the opportunity to kind of give yourself as many outs as possible, 100% protect yourself. But if you're in a situation where negotiations are coming down to the wire and you need to potentially shave off some contingencies to make it happen, that's when you can do that. So again, tailoring your offers, tailoring your LOIs are going to be the most obvious way to do that. The two biggest contingencies with an LOI are typically going to be your due diligence and financing contingencies if you have one. But the biggest one is almost always just the due diligence period, right? That is your biggest contingency within an offer. But you can totally tailor your offers to more specific ones if you have one for whatever reason. Let's say for whatever reason there's a hurricane coming and you're worried about a post-hurricane inspection, or maybe there's some very specific inspection you're worried about. You know you can't get them out there until a certain date that might be outside of your window. Like you could have a separate contingency for a very specific inspection. Or maybe like you can have a separate contingency if you're really concerned about environmental hazards. You can throw that in there. If you're worried about appraisals, again, kind of lumping that into the financing contingency, but you can have those kind of two separate things. Financing contingency would be more of a broad contingency. Hey, if for some reason we don't qualify, if we don't raise enough money, if this falls apart for X, Y, and Z financing reason, if the bank just finds us, no longer approved for the loan. And you could, versus having a financing contingency, a very broad one, you can have a very specific, hey man, we're good as long as this appraises. So your only contingency is an appraisal versus your contingency being a larger, broader financial contingency. You can have contingency for easements. If there's a property that you're concerned about an easement that you really want to get the details on, you can have, hey, this offer is contingent upon us confirming the status of the easement located at XYZ. A survey, say, and it kind of goes with easements, but you want to verify the status of the survey. It's contingent upon an acceptable survey to the buyer. Insurance review, like again, insurance is a big thing right now. Who knows what little freaking variable that the insurance company is going to throw at you that is going to shift this entire deal from a cash flow positive to a cash flow negative deal. So you can throw in contingencies for insurance requirements, insurance inspections. Lease audits. You can say, hey man, I'm very concerned about the lease audit here for whatever reason. You can make that a contingent. You can make a contingency on pretty much whatever you want. You're crafting the offer. So all I have to say is it's Burger King style. Have it your way, how you want to do it. but the more contingencies, the weaker the offer. All right. Again, that kind of goes to the next point of removing unnecessary barriers. So we could make an offer that has every contingency under the book, but are they necessary? Protect yourself with what you think is required, and that's what I would recommend. I wouldn't recommend going further. And one of the things that's nice, the fewer contingencies you have, the quote unquote cleaner the offer it is, the more trust you're kind of conveying to the seller as well. So if you're able to be transparent with the way you're offering, with what you're saying, and if what you're saying matches the LOI, which is matching the PSA, if all of these things are transparent and coordinate between everyone, the seller is going to trust you more and more. If you have a meeting with the seller and you say one thing, and then you submit an LOI that has more contingencies, and then you sign an LOI, then you submit a PSA that has other contingencies, like that seller's going to get confused and you're going to get pissed off. He's not going to trust you. So like, just realize having that kind of consistency is going to lead to more transparency. It's going to lead to more trust between you and the seller. And hopefully if you do hit a brick wall, like it's almost inevitable when you're doing due diligence, you might find, you know, a massive mold problem in one of the units, or like there's a big leak in one of the roofs, or like the plumbing is polybutylene and needs to be replaced in one of the buildings or something like that. You can say, hey man, I wasn't aware of this. I've been as transparent as possible through this whole process. We weren't aware that building 2 over here is polybutylene polybutylene piping. While all the other buildings don't have that. We need to adjust our price, or I need you to have some concessions here so we can replumb this entire building. And if you have this transparency up front, they're going to be much more willing to play ball and to negotiate when you need to there. All right. And then again, it just creates offers that resonate with everything else that we've kind of been saying there. Any questions about customization of your offers, guys? Cool. All right. Professionalism and credibility in your offers. So setting clear expiration dates is going to be one. So this is something that, you know, we're going back and forth with you guys recently, and with our offer, we've gone back in our advanced kind of analysis phase, and we were pretty clear every time, like, hey man, our offer is good until X date, and your LOI can specifically state like this offer will self-destruct in 48 hours. Like you have to respond within 48 hours, otherwise this is null and void. So just set those dates and stick to them. At the same time, don't be a jackass and send someone an offer that they have 2 hours to respond to and they're at the movie theater. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just give them a reasonable time frame. But if you set a time frame, then stick to it. I think, you know, 1 day is too short in the commercial real estate space. 2 weeks is too long. What's a good time period? I don't know, 2 to 5 days. Like, again, feel it out, talk to the seller, figure it out. Reggie, what would you say our normal response time is with our LOIs?
Pretty quickly. Depending on the situation, we can make it as short as 3 days. So I think we've given like a week before, like 3 to 7 days is pretty typical.
Yeah, just give you an idea of time frame for people to respond. Again, feel it out, be reasonable. All right. Always sign your LOIs. Should go without saying, but there are plenty of LOIs that we've seen even submitted on our properties for people looking to buy them that have not been signed. It just shows a level of professionalism. It shows that you're taking this seriously, and you're not just like pushing out cookie cutter boilerplate things, which you can obviously do with signature as well, but it's just one more way to show that your professionalism and a little more credibility there. If and when you can, if you want to demonstrate commitment to a property, even if you're like a remote investor, the moment you can get out there and view the property in person, it's going to demonstrate you have commitment. So definitely, whether it's after the LOI has been signed, or if you're even local before the LOI signed, if you can meet the seller at the property, meet the broker at the property, and really get a hands-on feel, you should be doing that to get a full idea of what's going on. And the other reason you should do that is to grow your credibility with your offer. There are plenty of people who are making offers from California for properties out in the East Coast, and they're not coming out to visit those properties. They're just making offers based on pictures and videos, and that's it. So if you're the person who's putting boots on the ground, it does mean something to sellers. We'll talk about next. We're going to get into the credibility packets, but displaying your capacity to close will win trust. And again, that's kind of what Josh was alluding to earlier. The exact example that I was just showing with Pace Morby, with this guy looking to buy potentially one of the deals I'm brokering. If you show that you have the ability to close, or are connected with somebody who has the ability to close, people are going to take you much more serious, and your credibility will increase for sure. And having a personal touch, it's not a bad thing in this business to have a personality. A lot of people are very, like, they think they want to be professional. They want to exude this kind of like real estate, what they consider to be like a real estate professional, right? Like this person wearing a suit, and they have a certain look to them, they're a certain kind of persona. But honestly, personality actually helps. If you can stand out and be authentically you, the broker is going to appreciate that more. And again, it's going to come through that authenticity will drive trust, which is going to drive hopefully more deals to you. So being yourself is not a bad thing. And ultimately, credibility leads to success, which kind of drives our recommendation, especially for newer investors, to start to build your credibility packet. I'll show you an example here. I'll show you two examples here in a second. But building your credibility packet is going to be huge. And just one, bolstering yourself and helping yourself feel confident that you have the ability to do this. But also when you're passing it out to brokers, that you're going to give brokers confidence through a packet that you have prepared and hopefully looks good, professional design, that you can pass to people. And it doesn't take like high quality. You don't need to pay somebody, but you can in Fiverr if you want to have it polished up for you. All right. In the credibility packet, we'll go through it. You want to include real examples and success stories. You want to present your specific unique value proposition. So like what is different? It's kind of your kind of authentic personality touch. And it's going to provide assurance to the potential sellers. And really it's kind of your passport to success. So let me just pull it up here. These are just some things that I wanted to say here. Let's pull this up. What's up, baby? No, 30 minutes. Okay, 30 minutes. All right, let me pull it up right now. All right, where did it go? Wow.
You're just being slack there, man. Our channel.
Yeah, I got it. I thought I downloaded it, but who knows? Who knows? All right. You got it. Yeah. All right. I will show you these two examples here. Now, this was Ferrari Capitals when Josh was early on. So if you guys were like, oh, this is Ferrari, he's done so many huge things. Look at Josh. He's like the best. This is Josh when he had like done one deal, right? So like this is still early on Josh, his packet here. So Ferrari Capital, right? It's pretty basic who we are, but it looks good. Has a nice clean feel to it. He talks about his investment approach, like what his goals are, and when it comes to his investment strategies, which is obviously shifted, right? He's going to talk about the more traditional strategy here versus what we've kind of shifted to be the more perpetuity strategy. He talks about his investment criteria. So if you're sending this to brokers, it's very clean and quick for a broker to see, okay, he's looking for up to 10 million. This deal's a $100 million deal. I'm not going to send this one to Josh. So hopefully it helps filter out deals that just don't match your buy box. Now, I will say, I always love looking at Josh's picture. This is like the best picture he had because this is Josh's wedding picture that he used for like years. I loved it. But it's good. You want to throw in a picture of you, again, authentically you, in your credibility packet. And you can throw a little bit about your background. You threw in, Reggie's background. This is back when Reggie's hair was on his head, not on his face. But, it's weird how the hair does shift that way.
That's before the hair went gray too.
That's it. And you can see a little picture of me, a little background there. And then you talk about some of your investments. What are some deals that you've done? Now, is this a 100-unit complex, a 30-unit complex? No, it's a quadplex. It's just one example of Josh's experience. It's not bad to show experience, that even if it's not in the commercial multifamily space that you're trying to get into. This is residential multifamily in the quadplex world. This is Reggie's. He did a syndication, 21-unit syndication over there in Mobile. So again, not quite multifamily space, but it does show credibility that you're able to tackle a deal. What do we got here? We had another single family flip, just give you an idea of what we're doing here. Oh, there we go. We finally got a multifamily complex there. And that's it. We had one complex at that point, but we showed whatever credibility that we could to try to illustrate our desire to grow to brokers. Here's Michael Leland's as well. Just give you guys one of the students. He has a little more of a just kind of a spelled out approach. little introduction, talk about his investment approach specifically, his investment criteria, background about him. And then, he also brings in the credibility of, of Josh and being in the group here. And so you can really leverage other people's credibility, like Josh was saying, to help yourself grow. And sorry, this might be too small for you guys to see with that thing. And then recent investments. You can totally pull in our recent investments if you want into your credibility packet, because again, we're here to help you guys out, and you're not stretching the limits at all, because you really are leveraging our credibility. It's one of the benefits of being in a group like this. Here's a 207 unit that we tackled. So he just picked 2 of the units that we tackled as an example. You don't need to always do every, it's like your classic. You don't want like a 10-page resume, right? You want to kind of hit the highlights. Brokers don't want to sit there and read a novel about your life. They want to try to either see something they can click through very quickly and say, okay, cool, I get an idea who you are. I trust it. Cool. Any questions in credibility packets, guys? Something in the chat.
So should we be sending that out to the commercial brokers that we're trying to partner up with?
Totally. I have
Yeah.
people send stuff to me all the time. Like, let me show you here. Danny. Well, here's one that sent me one the other day. So she sent this last week, right? Hey, is Danny texting about some fixer uppers? So she sent me her. This is her proof of funds. But then she sent me her website as well that I could check out. But you get an idea. Like, it just
Okay.
The more professionalism, the more credibility you lend, it just shows us that you're not like a window shopper. You're not wasting our time, right? You've spent time to shine your ass a little bit, to show that hey man, like look at me. I'm a person. I'm ready to do this. I'm motivated. Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay, rock and roll.
All right.
But Michael had asked if we were gonna send this out. Yeah, we'll add it into the drive for today's call. Plus, both of those are actually already in the drive in the writing offer section, but nonetheless, we'll add it again into today's call.
All right, last slide, and then we'll just show you the LOI quickly, and then we'll open it up to Q&A for you guys. So winning strategy and negotiations. I don't want to get too heavy into negotiations, but you can't really talk LOIs, at least without touching on negotiations. We already talked about it a little bit. But ultimately, problem solving is the core of negotiations. Like, problem solving is the core of an LOI development. It comes down to, the problem is this seller wants to sell their property. How can we craft a solution around that problem? If you can tap into any sort of emotional resonance with the seller, again, this all comes down to the very first thing, understanding the seller's needs. If you can tap into their emotional desires, you are going to have so much more success. The classic story of, there's a ton of stories that illustrate this point, but there are multiple examples of people offering a well below an offer price, but because they're hitting a certain emotional chord with the seller, their offers are accepted. Again, a lot of this comes down to relationships, and relationships are going to drive your understanding of what that emotional need or desire is. Cool. Real life success stories. One of the examples of like emotional resonance sort of would be, we had a seller that was really concerned about his 1031 exchange that he needed to do on the backside of the sale. And so we told him, hey man, we totally understand. I've been there before. It sucks with 1031 exchange timeline requirements. And because we were willing to concede and offer him that extension or that flexibility for his 1031 exchange, he went with us as a buyer, even though we were offering less than the other people that were offering the property. So just give you an idea there. All right, real life success stories of the $3 million savings. I know, Josh, you had discussed this before. You want to kind of go over the story of the $3 million savings with LOIs here in negotiations?
Oh, you talking about Chase Park? Yeah. So the big thing there, honestly, what we were talking about just a second ago, a slide or two ago, was just visiting the asset in person. So the guy had a really interesting stipulation, which the more I think about it, it's not the most craziest thing you ever heard of before, but it did sound crazy to me at the time because of the drastic differentiation in pricing. So the Chase Park, you guys know, we talked about it a lot. It's been a great example deal we've kind of discussed. It's our 188 unit we own in Montgomery. Well, we were in the process of not even negotiations, honestly. I actually found this deal on LoopNet, if you can believe it or not. I saw it on LoopNet, and I saw the listing broker was a broker we'd done like 2 or 3 deals with before. So I called him up and I was like, dude, what the heck, man? How you not gonna send me this deal? You gonna put it on a loop net before you send me this deal? And he was like, dude, I didn't know that you even like looked at Montgomery. I'm like, it ain't that far from where we're at. We'll definitely take a look at the market. He's like, well, now that I know, I'm gonna send you everything I got in Montgomery. It's like, well, send me this deal first because it looks interesting. So he sent me the information. We took a look at it, initially underwrote it, thought it looked pretty interesting. And I remember sending it to Matt and Reggie. Reggie went out like the next day, like 24, 48 hours later. Reggie drives 3 hours north to go to Montgomery and look at this asset. And it was the fact that Reggie actually went on site, met with the broker, walked the property, and we showed, I mean, there's a little credibility shown there in the fact that you actually get up, go and go there. But also one of the stipulations that the seller had was he wasn't going to entertain any offer at all, ever, if the individual never actually visited the asset. Which I thought that was the thing I was saying was kind of interesting. And so we offered 5 million on this property. There was another offer higher than ours at 8 million from a group based out of Hawaii. And they, for whatever reason, couldn't get someone to come out to the property. They couldn't get someone to fly out. It was going to take another week or two or something like that for them to like have time to be able to come and visit it. And this particular seller really wanted to sell the deal because he wanted to do a 1031 exchange on another asset. And so he was like, all right, well, if y'all are willing to satisfy my 1031 stipulations and the fact that you've already visited the property, I'm willing to basically take a $3 million haircut, in exchange for that. And so it was a very interesting stipulation, but just our gumption, our drive or quickness to go and actually visit the property, be communicative with both the seller and the broker, saved us, in the grand scheme of things, saved us $3 million, but we never made an $8 million offer in the first place, but still got a pretty sweet deal on this asset.
That's right. That's right. So
Created a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, relationships are big, and really just kind of showing your willingness to work and willingness to react and be there. I mean, Reggie's localness has helped a ton. Josh's localness has helped a ton when he was living up there. I mean, it's it makes a difference for sure to be able to show that. You don't have to be local. I'm not trying to say you have to be local to be successful, but it helps to have that boots in the ground aspect. All right. So all this to say is you want to keep innovating and adapting through these negotiations. You guys have saw in our kind of the past 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, we've been doing these kind of advanced analytical series of showing, hey, here's a real deal we got. Here's our offer, and here's how we analyze the offer. Oh, they passed on that LOI, right? Well, hey guys, here's our new approach. We're going at it. What about this? Sweet, make that offer. No, they didn't pass on that. All right, hey, what about this one? I think they might take this one. No, they didn't take that one. All right, what about, we went like 4 or 5 or 6 iterations of us trying to adapt and overcome the objections with the seller to make that happen. So just don't be the person who just submits a deal and just kind of gives up. Just do everything you can. If you think a deal is viable, you should be fighting for it to try to make it happen. Every deal is totally a new opportunity. So just take that with the way it is and just it really, every deal could be like the life-changing event for you. So kind of view that as such and really fight for them. And that's kind of the same thing, hitting it on the head too many times here, but leave no stone unturned when it comes to thinking about options to make a deal work. And when it comes to negotiations, again, we'll get more in the negotiations next week. And the last thing, the last point I hear is just realize after all is said and done, you're going to fight through a lot of deals you're going to try to make work, but not all deals are going to happen. Not all deals are going to come together, and you need to kind of accept that fact now, because otherwise, if you expect every deal to happen, emotionally, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. I want you to look like Jeremy here, right? When you land a deal, you can get excited. It's going to be awesome because you made that deal happen, because you kind of successfully navigated the negotiations there. But just realize, I don't know what the percentage is, probably 95% of our offers we make or more are going to end up in some sort of rejection or non-acceptance. And that's totally fine. That's just the way the business goes. But we celebrate the successes, but don't get down on yourself when the losses come with you spending time on these deals. Because even the time spent negotiating deals is not is not a loss, right? It's you're learning, you're getting better at analyzing, you're building more relationships, and you're putting more tools in your tool chest for the next time a deal comes around. So don't view it as a loss if you don't get a deal accepted. You should view that as hey man, I've gotten smarter and I'm ready to go for the next round. Cool. And that's the big stuff, guys, there. So decoding your LOI. I will show you the LOI here right now. And so we can jump into that, and I'll just quickly go over that, and we will open it up for Q&A.
Lots of good stuff today.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Lightweight. All right, here is our kind of blanket LOI. Like Josh said, we will pass this out into the group, but just go down, letter of intent to purchase your real estate. Pretty straightforward. Got your nice little logo up top. Property. What property are you trying to buy? This is their last one that we backed out of after we got under contract. The Phoenix Apartments. Throw the date, seller, and who you are as a buyer. Pretty straightforward here. This letter says we want to pursue a purchase with you. That's what it says. Here's our terms. Here's the general terms you want to jump on. All right, purchase price we talked about. Earnest money we talked about today. Time frame. Look at that, guys. The three big levers is what we put first, right? Because those are the three things that people care about most. Term, earnest money, purchase price, and time frame. From there, what type of contingencies do we have? Due diligence. We want a 30-day time frame for due diligence here. Inspection period. What are some documents? Here's the documents I told you that we're going to want to see during this. All right, here's all the documents we want to see. We want to see title. We want to see the list of documents here. Title policy. How is title going to be conveyed? Title, you do want to make that clear about what is being conveyed here on title. Are you buying the entity? Are you buying the LLC? In which case you don't need to worry about the titling, because the titling is already in the entity. But if you're selling the real estate, then you want to ensure the title policy is conveyed with full title. Closing should be up there with time frame, but regardless, you can highlight when closing is going to occur. Prorations, all customary prorations. This just needs to be said because people get confused, and it's just good to get out in the open. This is basically saying if you're selling a property in June and that property has $12,000 in annual every year in taxes, at closing, because taxes are typically done in arrears, the seller is going to pay you $6,000 towards the taxes. And then at the end of the year, you're going to have to pay for the full year of taxes, right? So, or depending on how your county or state kind of handles that. So that's one example of prorations and what that means. Access, here we go. We agreed to have access, under these restrictions. Commissions, let it be known we are not buying we are not paying the seller's agent commissions. Seller's going to be responsible for that. We want to make sure all the money, all the big picture money stuff is accounted for in the LOI. And then here's the big one. The letter intent is not intended to create a binding agreement on the seller to sell or the buyer to buy. The purpose of this letter is to set forth primary terms and conditions upon which to execute a formal purchase and sale agreement. And that's the actual contract. The letter of intent is open for acceptance until 5 p.m. February 15th. Here we go. We have a deadline. We have a typo too. Once this letter is executed, the seller will not engage with negotiations on any other potential buyers for a period of 2 weeks or 14 days. So again, is this legally binding that he can't negotiate with anyone else?
No.
No, he could do it, right? But this is, again, me, hey, Paul, man, are you going to negotiate with anyone? No, like we're saying, like, I'm not going to negotiate. Let's just be people here and agree to that. And that's it. We're going to sign this and we're going to go forth and conquer. Any questions in the LOI, guys?
Because it doesn't have a notary, I guess that's also another reason why it's not a binding. It's just, like you said, sell circle here. So.
Your purchase and sale agreement is not going to be notarized either. So you don't need to be notarized.
Okay.
Necessarily. There's only certain things that really need notarized. Like depending on the state you're in, like in Florida, deeds need to be notarized. Other states, I think they don't have to, but like I just sold one of my properties, and the way I conveyed that deed was electronic notary. That's my first time I ever did that over Zoom. I got a notary, which was pretty cool.
No, that's, yeah.
Cool. We'll open up there. Any questions about the LOI? Any questions about any of the content or anything you got, guys? We'll open it up to all questions. Deepak, you got something?
Yes, specifically for the LOI, I did see that you guys had put the financial arrangements within the LOI as a part of the due diligence phase, right? Secure financing arrangements.
Yep. So in this one, we have financing. Basically, our financial contingency is overlapped with our due diligence. So it's all in one for this LOI. We said,
Got
hey,
it.
we're going to get everything sorted in 30 days.
So have you guys ever done retrades when you're not able to do a capital raise enough within that time frame, and then you've gone back and renegotiated some of the time frames?
Luckily, we've never had to deal with that in our multifamily stuff where we had to retrade due to a lack of a capital raise. But if we did, then yeah, I mean, if it's a concern, we would craft this a little differently. I would have probably a second period of like financial contingency in place here for maybe 45 days or like whatever you need to be comfortable on your end. But
Yeah.
just realize, as long as you're in this window, you have the leverage in the negotiations. So say we get this under contract, we're at day 27 or 25, and we realize we're not going to hit the mark and we need an extension. That's when we go to the seller. We say, hey man, I really hate to do this, but we need an extra week of due diligence because of X, Y, and Z. And if you've been authentic and you've conveyed transparency and trust to them, they will typically offer you that extension if you've built that relationship with them. So I hope that makes sense.
Right. It might also make sense to add a clause. That's what we did with one of the deals, is add a clause to extend the due diligence period by an extra EMD amount or something like that.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll have a scaled EMD. You'll see in some LOIs where they'll say, again, let's say it's a total of $20,000, $25,000 EMD. And then $5,000 goes hard right away as an incentive for the seller to go with your offer. Right away, you're getting $5,000 if I back out tomorrow. The next $10,000 will go hard after day 30. And then another $10,000 will go hard after day 45 or whatever it happens to be. Like you can have kind of a scaled earnest money deposit going hard. And that's not uncommon in the business either, for sure.
Okay.
Bring up a good point. What else you guys got? Any other questions?
But when you say it goes hard, it still has those I guess if you put the framework in there saying, as long as all of these things have been met, right? So
No, I mean, when I say go hard, I mean is non-refundable. So hard to me means you could do it a couple of different ways. Like in that example, I could give you $25,000 as an earnest money deposit right up front, but $5,000 is non-refundable immediately. So if we back out for whatever reason, that seller's getting that money no matter what. But the remaining $20,000 is protected for another 30 days. But at day 30, $10,000 of that goes non-refundable, and then the other maybe is protected until another certain time. The other way to do that is to say, hey man, on day one, I'm going to put $5,000 in earnest money deposit. I'm going to pay that to you right now, and it's non-refundable. And then day 30, I'm going to give you another $10,000. And then day 45 or day 60, I'm going to give you another $10,000. And you can kind of do it that way as well.
okay.
And what else you got? LOIs, deals, good news, bad news, successes, failures.
Okay, I have another question.
Yeah.
So if you scroll up there, you had mentioned obviously any deal is a good deal, right? So and when I say that, I mean, not every deal is a good deal. Anything is negotiable. Would you recommend buying out that old that LLC that they might have? Well, I guess you don't really know because you don't know what the credit looks like, right?
Well, credit I care less about. I care more about liability, to be honest with you. I would really want to get a solid understanding of what that entity has done in the past. And if it's a newer entity, I would entertain it if the entity was formed just for that property.
Right.
And it hasn't been in existence for a while, and I got a good idea of what lawsuits have been filed against them and how they've been run in the past. That'd be a very hairy situation in my mind, unless I understood what the liability I was jumping into, because that's the biggest concern for me buying a company is the liability piece. I don't know, Reggie or Josh, you have any other thoughts on buying the LLC?
It's easier for financing. Like the banks like to do that better than an asset-based purchase. But like Matt said, you purchase any liabilities, which means any mistakes, any wrongdoings, anything like that, it can come up to bite you within the statute of limitations. So that's the concern. If you think you can do enough due diligence to kind of get all the skeletons out of the closet, hey, maybe that's the way to go. But that's just a judgment call you have to make.
And you
Yeah,
could try to, purchase it with indemnification and some sort of limited liability. Like you could try to do it that way. I mean, good example is the publisher that I was using to publish my book that was supposed to be out this month. Basically, they went bankrupt and they owe me 20 grand effectively. And so I may sue them for that, for that money that they owe me. But the way they did their hostile takeover, basically another company came and bought them. The company bought all of their assets, but none of their debt, none of their liability, is the way I was told. So I may pursue it still just because it just annoys me. But at the same time, it may be falling on deaf ears.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's worth you sue them anyway.
Yeah, it sucks, man. I didn't know.
Yeah, they suck.
Can I add a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
If you buy the existing LLC, can you still do a cost segregation, or is that linked to the original?
I asked my CPA this exact same question yesterday, because of the scenario of the property that I'm trying to sell. Sorry, there's a freaking mosquito in here. It's really not. No, it's too. Sorry. I know it's distracting you guys. You probably don't see anything. I'm just like a crazy person. I asked my CPA the same exact question yesterday, and he said, you can do I can't remember the name of the form, some 529, some form, I can't remember what it was, where you can step up the basis on the property to current market value, which is something I had never heard of before. We've never executed that, so I can't tell you anything of experience, but my CPA did say there is a way to increase the basis of the property, at which point you could then cost segregate and depreciate that basis that you just increased. Yeah.
But anything that's been used previously by the other owner is done and gone. You don't get any of that.
That my understanding is if you buy it as you're taking over the entity, you would be taking over their tax basis, right? Like you'd be, but again, this is not something I'm super smart on, so I'd have to engage my CPA to really, and I was trying to have the conversation with him yesterday, but he was not, because it wasn't a specific example. He was using a classic, well, it depends. Like, what about this? And what about this? I'm like, just give me like a general answer, man.
CPAs. Well, if this, well, then that.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like there's a way to do it to where it's effectively the same for you as a buyer, to where you can still depreciate and enjoy the benefits of the depreciation. But I don't know what the cost of that is. Like, what is the downside to that necessarily, or for the seller or for the buyer?
Got it.
Conceptually, I think about when the LLC changes hands, it's going to a different taxpayer, and an LLC is a pass-through. And so the way I think about it is, okay, we purchased this LLC, it has assets, but now the taxpayer, like the membership of the LLC is different. So I guess it makes sense that the IRS has some kind of mechanism in place to step the basis up. I never knew that.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I thought it was pretty cool. What else you guys got?
I'll ask a quick question just about the mastermind.
Yeah.
Just a little question. Is there an airport that you suggest flying to? Because I saw there was like 3.
Mobile or Pensacola. I'm flying into Pensacola. Whatever one you can get cheaper flights to, I think it's going to be, well, I guess it depends on where we stay. If we're staying in Mobile will probably be the most convenient, but I'll let Reggie jump in on that.
Yeah, MOB, it'd be your preferred method. It'll probably be a slightly more expensive. But then you can fly into PNS, but then you're probably going to, rent a car, have extra gas to pay. So it's probably 6 one way, half a dozen the other.
Yeah, if you fly in Pensacola, it's probably going to be an hour and 15 minutes if you got traffic. Flying to Mobile still might be 45 minutes because you got to go through all those
Airport, yeah.
But it'll be faster. It'll be a shorter distance, but it still will take some time just because it's like the main road with a gajillion lights.
So details for the event. Go ahead, Reggie.
I was just going to tell them to flip a coin.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going, like I said, I'm flying into Pensacola just because, I don't know, that's the one I decided and seemed to be cheaper at the time. The details for the events. As of right now, we're still shaking them out, but we are planning on getting ideally lawyer, potentially CPA, probably not CPA, but we'll see. Lawyer, CPA, broker, property manager, GC. So getting some like professionals within our sphere right now to come over and speak. And from there, it's going to be a lot of what you guys bring to the event. So our goal is to kind of, like I said before, is to bring 4 things, and we'll get more details on here as it comes. But something you're looking to get out of the event. Like, what are you looking to learn? What are you offering the group? Something you've learned that you think is going to be beneficial to everyone. Some struggles you're dealing with, and so some you're struggling with, and some successes you've had. So kind of 4 things. And I'd like to really, the whole point of this is for us to really get to know each other. As much as I love seeing your face virtually, really just kind of starting to build the relationships within the group, because the stronger relationships that we have together, it means, like we've said over and over again, this entire business is relationship oriented. We're just going to grow stronger as a group, and our deal flow is going to grow stronger as well. So we'll have kind of what we'll call the round tables, where we'll have each of you guys basically sit in front of the group and go over through those 4 things. You can make it as formalized as you want, and have like a PowerPoint presentation about your life and who you are, and here's things I'm bringing today. Or it could be, hey, throw it on a notebook and talk about yourself and talk about what you got going on there. And depending on the amount of people that come, that's going to take up probably 50% of the time, is just kind of getting to know each other. We're planning on going out to eat at least once. It'll be on us. We haven't determined the restaurant or anything yet, but we'll plan on going at least one night out to go have some fun there. We will plan on providing the food for, well, depending if we go Airbnb or hotel, we'll at least have snacks and everything else, during the events for you guys. And the goal is that this is at no cost to you guys. So there's not some, like, if you've been to like Bigger Pockets conference or freaking 10X Live or, any of these like large events, this is not those. This is a smaller, truly mastermind event where we're getting together. There's not going to be Tony Robbins jumping up in front of the crowd trying to change your life, guys. This is going to be personal connections here that were being made with not much fanfare. So it's more of a person-to-person kind of networking event.
So it's going to start Friday morning, or like Thursday night also, like people are around, I guess.
You can totally get in Thursday night. That's the intent. I will not be there Thursday night because I'm going to an event in Austin, Texas, then I'm flying to Vegas from Austin. Then from Vegas, I'm flying here. So I'm back to back. This will be my 3rd event in a row. So I will be there Friday morning. But if you guys want to get there Thursday, yeah, I'm sure there'll be some sort of casual get together for those of you who are in town on Thursday evening. And then Friday, early, mid morning, we'll start around 10 a.m. That we'll start the official stuff. Josh, Reggie, and I will at least have 1 or 2 presentations for you guys for whatever we think is going to be relevant for you. We might have some other guest speakers, maybe, but I really would like to dedicate a lot of time for us just to be able to chat and get to know each other, and then share about ourselves, and then really get to know our sphere as well, as far as the other people in our network, so you guys can start to meet them.
Yeah, so if anyone hasn't already filled out the form, the RSVP form, it's in the chat and it's in Slack. Try to do that before, honestly, today would be great, but we'll make the deadline Monday of next week.
Yeah, we'll test the waters. Like this one totally might be a hotel, where we get a hotel business conference center, and we just kind of do most of the stuff in the conference center, more bare bones. And if it goes well, maybe next time we'll do the Airbnb. But depending on the RSVPs and everything, we may get an Airbnb. If we do an Airbnb, it's only going to be like a 7 or 8 room Airbnb, where some of you guys can stay in the Airbnb at a cost to offset, the cost of the Airbnb. Everyone else will just find your own lodging. And if we do the hotel, everyone will just kind of find your own lodging wherever you want to go. Ideally at the hotel, just for convenience, but you won't have to. Hopefully, does that answer most of the questions? Any other questions there, guys?
Robbie said he doesn't have access to Slack. I'm sending you the link, Robbie.
There was a kind of the back of the napkin calculator that you used last week. And I was trying to look for it and could not find it. Can you point me in the direction of where that would be?
What was that? Back of the napkin, what?
It was a calculator I used on Thursday.
In the resources section. So if you click on the mastermind tab, click on resources, which should be like chapter or section 11. Then there'll be a subfolder that will say under.
How about we just show him rather than talk through it? One sec.
Resources. Got it. Now what?
Resources, underwriting, and then it'll say like quick analyzer.
All right, here we go. We got resources. So we're in the drive here. Yep. Resources. Where are we going? Underwriting. And then we got
deal analyzer.
Deal analyzer. That's the one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sweet. All right, buddy. It's late, so we'll upload the recording of this call and the slides. and the 2 credibility packets that we went over today, and the LOI. We went over a lot of stuff today.
Yep. Hey guys,
all
go
that
find
in
some
today's
deals.
job.
Let's buy some real estate.
So if anyone has any questions, let us know. Don't forget to fill out that form. See you guys on Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Later.
Thank you.